Welcome to The Explainer. In the early days of March 1982, the death of comedian John Belushi was, to put it mildly, a massive cultural event. But today, we're going to push all the headlines and the rumors aside. We are going straight to the source, the official coroner's report, to walk through the documented clinical facts of his final hours.
Okay, let's dive right in. This single line right here, adapted from the official summary, it really sets the stage for everything we're doing here. We are not here to speculate, we're here to understand the official account, the evidence from the scene, the condition of the body, and the hard science that explains exactly what happened.
So, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll build a timeline based on what witnesses told investigators. Then, we'll zoom in on the physical evidence found at the scene, in that bungalow. After that, we'll get into what the body itself revealed, both on the outside and the inside. And finally, we'll piece it all together to understand the specific science behind the fatal overdose.
All right, so first up, let's piece together those final hours. The report is incredibly meticulous here, laying out a sequence of events that gives us a really clear picture of a rapid decline, all based on statements given to investigators right there at the scene and later at the police station.
And what you're seeing here, compiled from the report, is just this stark progression over less than 12 hours. He was staying at the Chateau Marmont Hotel in bungalow number 3, and after a night of heavy drinking, he was so intoxicated he couldn't drive himself and literally had to be helped out of a private club. And almost as soon as he got back to his room, his condition got worse.
Now, what's really significant here is the context the report provides. So, he needs help to get to his room, he vomits almost immediately, but the substance use didn't stop. The report actually details that after this episode, he resumed drinking and using cocaine as other people came and went through the early morning hours. This detail from the report is absolutely crucial. He'd taken a shower around 6:30 in the morning, complaining that he felt cold, and then he went to bed. So what do these breathing sounds actually mean? Well, medically speaking, they are a huge red flag. It points to what's called a depressed respiratory drive, or maybe a partial airway obstruction. Basically, the body's entire breathing mechanism was already compromised, and this is a key piece of the puzzle we are definitely going to come back to. Okay, so from the timeline, let's zoom in on the bungalow itself. The report shifts here, moving from people's stories to a cold, hard description of the physical environment. The report is super specific here. The person who found him unresponsive tried to clear his airway and moved him onto the carpet to try and help while waiting for the paramedics. And investigators found evidence to back this up. They noted traces of dried mucus and what they called possible vomitus on the dead right where he would have been lying.
You know, the items found at the scene, they tell a story all on their own. This wasn't just some hotel room. It was an environment where drugs were being actively used. The report meticulously lists every single one of these items, noting that the syringe and spoon had residue on them and were collected for analysis. Together, it paints this unambiguous picture of very recent drug preparation.
So the investigation then turns from the environment to the body itself, and the external exam, well, that provided the first layer of direct physical evidence about what had just happened.
This position, just as the coroner documented it, was a direct result of him being moved from the bed. His legs were straight, and by the time he was formally examined, those post-mortem changes had already started to set in.
Okay, so these are standard observations after a death, but they're really important. Rigor and livor mortis, they help investigators figure out a more precise time of death. The report noted that the skin was still blanching, meaning turning white, under pressure in some spots, which told them these changes were still in the early stages of becoming fixed.
So this is the crucial takeaway from the external exam. It immediately and unequivocally confirmed very recent intravenous drug use. The marks were right there in the inner elbows. And the fresh hemorrhage, that's bleeding, around some of the punctures meant they were made right before his circulation stopped. The report also made a point to confirm there was no other significant trauma anywhere on the body.
All right, now we go deeper. We're moving from the outside of the body to the inside, to the autopsy itself. This is where the story told by the timeline and the scene gets confirmed by science.
And each one of these findings is like another piece of the puzzle falling into place. The lungs were heavy, filled with a foamy fluid. That's a hallmark of an overdose. The brain was swollen from a lack of oxygen. But look at the airway, redness and fluid. This links directly back to that wheezing and snoring that was observed hours earlier. It confirms this was a gradual respiratory decline, not something that happened in an instant.
Okay, so now we can put all the pieces together. We have the timeline, the scene, the body. Now we can understand exactly how these substances, which were confirmed by toxicology, interacted to cause a total systemic collapse.
The toxicology was crystal clear. The report states the cause of death was acute intoxication. It wasn't just one drug, but a specific and notoriously lethal combination. And just so we're clear, the morphine found in his system is what's left over after the body processes heroin, so that confirms its use.
Think of it like this. It's a war inside the body. You have a stimulant, cocaine, that's screaming at the system to speed up, jacking up the heart rate and the body's need for oxygen. But at the exact same time, you have a depressant, heroin, that's whispering to the brain's breathing centers to slow down or even stop completely. And the real danger here is that the stimulant can mask the effects of the depressant, so the user has no idea how badly their breathing is actually being suppressed.
So here's how that tragic cascade unfolds. The body is just overwhelmed by these opposing forces, and it loses its ability to regulate itself. As the heroin takes a stronger hold, breathing slows way down. The lungs start to fill with that fluid, oxygen gets cut off from the brain, and then a final fatal collapse of both the respiratory and circulatory systems. The report makes it absolutely clear this was a documented progression from substance use to physiological failure.
And that brings us right back to where we started. By following the evidence that was documented in the coroner's report, from the witness timeline to the scene to the external exam and finally to the internal toxicology, we get a complete and tragically clear picture. There is no mystery here. There's only a clinical, documented certainty.
You know, the official report doesn't offer any moral judgments. It just provides a definitive, dispassionate record. It shows us how a sequence of observable warning signs and documented choices led to a predictable physiological outcome. It doesn't speculate on why, it just presents the facts. And in doing that, it leaves us to think about the powerful, preventative lessons that are held within that clinical certainty.